Guys, I'm going to show you something about this. This is a parallel type card. I'm running Mach3 and I'm going to explain why it's doing what it's doing, everything about a parallel port and what you need to know about Mach3 and Mach4. Alright? So this is a parallel port cable. That's a parallel port. USB. Now this is the great granddaddy of USB. This is where everything began right here. All the different protocols and stuff USB uses today was basically done on this back in the day. So I'm going to explain this and explain why your controller's screwing up and how to fix it and what you need to know about parallel ports in operating systems, all that good stuff with CNC controllers. Alright guys, so I'm going to show you what's up here. This is my parallel port card. It's in a PCI Express slot. And I'm going to show you exactly why you don't want to use this card. I ended up putting this card in the system, and I've had a lot of different problems. And I've read the forums, and apparently a lot of other people have, so I'm going to explain exactly why we don't use that, and how to fix it, and which one to use. Alright, so here's what you're going to want to know when you're setting up a parallel port. So we're going to go over the My Computer, or Computer, Windows 7. We're going to go to Properties. It's going to bring up the info about your computer. Now if you're using a parallel port, if it's USB it doesn't matter. If you're using a parallel port one, you need a 32-bit operating system right here. That is the goal. You need at least 8 gig of memory. And just anything after Pentium 4 really perfectly fine. I say 8 gig because then you don't get the system lag updating code. You can get away with 4, I believe, minimum. But then you get a pause in your project. So anyways, with that said, you need a 32-bit operating system, and I'm going to explain why in a minute. So we're going to go to Device Manager. And here's the card. And we're going to go to Properties. Port settings. You never want to use an interrupt, and you want to enable legacy plug and play detection. You can put it whatever port you want. Mine's just on 3. Put it left. Now this right here under resources is actually the port's address. So that D100, you're going to want to remember that. Alright. So we're going to go into Mach3. This case we're using the mill one. Alright. I'm going to go to Configuration, Ports and Pins. And in this address it's going to have, I think it's like a 273 or something in this port address. You're going to want to put that D100 in there, because that's the port address. You're going to want this on 35,000 Hertz, and then you would hit apply. Motor outputs, it's 2 and 6, 3 and 7, 4 and 8, 8 and 9, 16, 17 for all the different axes that the card can handle. There's 4 on it. There's a 5th expansion one on this one. I left all these canceled because you don't want a bunch of false signals killing your project while you're trying to set it up. So you could do that later once you get a running product. Now for output signals, you want to enable 1 and 1 with 2 check marks. And on output 1, you want to enable 1, 14 and a check mark. You leave this blank, leave this, unless you need to change this for your spindle setting. You would hit apply, and after that point, you should have a functional Mach3. But we're not going to have a functional Mach3. Okay, they're all at 0, okay? So You hear that horrible, dreadful noise? That's actually caused by the parallel port. I'm going to explain why. And I have another error with this you're going to see in a minute. Alright, so now as you can see, up there is the head. That is our z-axis, and this is our x-axis, and y would be forward and back. So, this is a common problem that a lot of people have with parallel ports. So we got our x, we'll do the z. So z is at 0, so I'm going to move it in a positive manner. Alright, now I'm going to move it in the opposite direction. If you watch the display, it's still going in the wrong direction. So now we just went past, so we're going to do the same thing here. We just moved, we're going to go back, and we're still going in the same direction. Alright. So let me get back down here and I'll explain why. Alright, so you may be asking what the deal is and why is this happening. So that card up there is a PCI Express card. Okay. And it has 32-bit capabilities and all that. And it works perfectly fine with a 32-bit operating system, even though it's in a 64-bit lane. So down below the PCI, that's the first generation before PCI Express, is a 32-bit slot. Now those 32-bit slots ran on 6 volts. The PCI Express is running on 3 volts. So what happens is the controller back there that I first showed you when we started, that PCI Express card is only putting out 3 volts of a signal to that controller back there. And it's not enough to actually drive the circuit and correctly run it. It's losing bits of information along the way. So the actual controller runs on like about, I think it's 5 to 9 volts roughly out of a parallel port. The old ISA ones were 9 volts, so that's where you get that range from. So to solve the problem of everything you just saw, I need to take that PCI Express one out and use a PCI one so that I can get the 6 volts required to properly drive my 4-axis controller back there. So that is the reason that you have the one direction and why you have multiple errors and stuff. If it does run, it almost always freezes, pauses in the middle of a thing, or crashes. And people just can't understand what it is. But, you know, back in the day, that was a 32-bit slot. And it had 6 volts coming out of it. These are 64-bit and run on 3 volts. And that is the main issue of why Mach3 and Mach4 will not run correctly on a parallel port when you use a PCI Express card. So, if you followed everything that I showed you, you will have one that runs perfectly fine. They make USB to parallel port adapters. It's special for Mach3, not one of the little generic printer ones. You can get a card, it has to be PCI. You have to have a 32-bit operating system, and you have to have the addresses and stuff set up correctly. So this was the first generation, basically, before USB. So I hope that explains some of it, because I saw a lot of people having trouble with Mach3 and Mach4 trying to run a parallel port. That won't work. And I spent hours trying to figure out what was going on. And I physically pulled it out, tested the pins, and I realized I'm only getting 3 volts up at the board. And that board requires a minimum, I think, of 5 volts to even run correctly. So I hope that helps someone. I hope that explains it. Because a lot of people just don't know much about the older parallel ports. And so I got a PCI one coming. I'm going to put it in, and that'll solve all the problems on this. So, alright, peace out.